Today we'll be speaking to another member living with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease or hereditary motor sensory neuropathy. I think I've got it right there. Um, I I know a little bit about CMT, as people call it, in terms of the abbreviation, because my first
Yeah.
diagnosis was Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. And I lived with what I thought is CMT for, I think, 8 years. So if someone
Wow.
if someone asked me about what do you have, what kind of disease do you have, I would say I have CMT. So today we welcome Meghan Richards. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that you're going to tell us about your experiences with CMT. And yeah, hopefully we can compare some notes as well. So thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
No problem. I'm actually glad to be here for many years with my condition. I didn't want to admit it. I wanted nothing to come to this foundation. I wanted to be normal.
Well,
And it's taken me a while to come to terms with it. And now that I have, I wished I'd just done it sooner.
yeah, now that you say that, I mean, I when I was diagnosed, I had the same thing. I hid it from everyone because I think it
Hmm.
is possible with CMT because it's very slow and you just start to walk funny. I don't know if your experience was the same, and you can still hide
Very
it.
much. I mean,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, when I was born, it didn't show I was what normal. And from about 8 years old as well, I was still, they would say normal, I suppose. And then in my early teens, around about 10 upwards, I started showing that, started falling more, ankle twists, all of these things. And then they realized, and then I was taken to the Donald Gordon Institute to be tested. And they then diagnosed me with Charcot-Marie-Tooth type 2. And
So how long have you
but
been
that
living
was,
with how long have you been living with CMT now? How many years?
if I can, if I can say, yeah, around about, I'm 13 now, but I was diagnosed around about 10, 11. But up until that, I don't know, I was normal. Well, nobody told me I walked funny then, but it was only noticeable when I went into school and,
Yeah.
kids started to see that I was different, that I actually realized, okay, maybe I am a bit different.
Yeah, it's very gradual. All these diseases are, I also the funny thing is I I attended my 30-year high school reunion, giving away my age now, this year.
Yeah.
I looked at photos of me in matric and I could see my legs already starting to kind of bend a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. It's so what do you, I mean, what can you tell us about CMT at this stage in your journey? What have you learned at this stage?
Um, so from like, how can I say, when I was in high school, I was different, but I competed. I went to a normal school, okay, an Elson school that deals with learning disabilities, but physically, I was like everybody else. I competed sports. I went to stadiums. I was quite an athlete. It was only after school that things got a bit different for me. Cramping, tripping. I did the whole get the brace. I went and saw many doctors and they said, do this, do that. I've never had an op though, and I won't ever have one. To be honest, my biological mother, she had 39 operations alone on her feet trying to fix something that unfortunately there is no cure at this point in time. And I didn't. And I would like to say that it's affected my life, but not as severely as I made it out to be growing up. I thought, I'd be in a wheelchair. But realistically, for me, I'm still quite functional and strong. So yeah, but I've learned a lot about it. At first I didn't even know it was CMT. I just thought it was MSD, muscular dystrophy. I thought that's what it's called. And then later on, the older I got and the more accepting, I wanted to know a bit more about it. And so I learned that it's actually partly affects your lungs and, the muscles and all of that. But yeah, I've learned a lot. But I haven't changed my way of life. I have in a way, but I haven't. I still do. I go out, I dance, I go do things with my friends. I walk, but I won't lie, I don't walk very far, and then I sit down. And I've also learned that my weight is a contributing factor to my mobility. If my weight is too much, my legs take strain and then the tripping will start falling. So I've got to learn to balance out the weight so that the legs can sustain the weight. So that
Yeah.
I would say the weight thing was a bit of an issue for a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, other
Well,
than
let's
that,
let's
like,
talk about the diagnosis for a while. You say you didn't know exactly what you had. How did you come to know that you've got CMT? Because in my case, I told you, I mean, I was diagnosed in 1997 with CMT and only got some kind of diagnosis that's correct in 2005. And only in 2017 that I get the gene therapy that could pinpoint it exactly. How did you come to know your diagnosis?
so like I said earlier, I was seen by the Donald Gordon, but
Uh,
before the Donald Gordon came up in high school, I started falling a lot and breaking my ankle and twisting inwards, and my foot has dropped foot. So wearing shoes was an issue sometimes because the way I walk, I couldn't. And then when the falling started getting really bad, that's when I was taken to see a doctor, and the doctor said, "Go see this specialist, go there," and
sorry,
eventually landed up at the Donald Gordon, and they did a genetic thing.
you just
Yeah.
froze it. You've just froze a little bit, but I think I got most of that. Did they do tests?
Yes, they did blood tests. I then saw also a physio. Um, Yeah, but it was mainly a blood test. But I must admit, I was very young and I didn't pay a lot of attention, but they did do the test and they came back and we had sat in this like little boardroom and they told, no, I've got this condition, what type, and these are ways you can deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that as well. You have to go and deal with
yeah.
it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I just want to get some more info on the exact muscles that are affected. Is it your leg muscles at this point? And then you said maybe your diaphragm as well. Is it your leg muscles and that, or do you also have it in your hands and your arm?
I must admit, from my waist up and my hands, I'm extremely strong.
Yeah,
Like yeah, I don't know, but it's from the waist down where I do struggle a lot with standing for long periods of time. But I'm also, it depends on my mindset. If I can push myself to a limit, but the next day I will suffer for that. So
yeah,
I've got to learn to find my balance. But yeah,
yes,
also with the feet, the ankles, my ankles bend quite easily. And if I step on something uneven, my ankle's easy to turn if I'm not wearing a shoe that has somewhat of an ankle support.
yeah,
So yeah, I would say and the lungs, for years, I suffered with pneumonia. I got it like 3 times a year. But that's part of the muscular dystrophy. It affects my lungs.
yeah,
But to be honest, I'm still smoking, vaping, but I can feel now the older I'm getting that sometimes it's a struggle.
yeah,
But yeah, I would
yeah.
definitely say my legs mainly and my chest now and then. But yeah, my legs, ankles are my toughest ones to deal with.
Yeah, and then just looking at how it affects your life, you've mentioned that it doesn't really affect your overall quality of life, um, and you're still able to work. There's no assistive devices that you're using,
Yeah.
so maybe your energy levels are, sometimes you have to manage your energy levels, and
Yes.
so accessibility in society is not really a problem for you at this point in time.
No, not at this point in time. And like I said, from young, I was extremely fit. I did all the sports, soccer, tennis, out down to boxing. Um, and also like, I grew up with a very rough crowd of friends. So I got myself involved with a lot of things that were detrimental to my health. Um, and surprisingly, I made it through that. I recovered, and luckily with no severe permanent damage. But I do from there. I've always been strong, and it's only now lately where I'll feel it. But I don't
Well,
take any form of painkillers or anything like that. Maybe a muscle gel here and there, or the
yeah,
days my muscles hurt.
yeah.
But yeah, no painkillers or anything like that.
Yeah, it all sounds very familiar to me. Especially back in the day, the negative coping mechanisms, as we call it. I
Yes.
think a lot of us, because there was no assistance, back then. If you go back to the 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s, there was no assistance, and society was totally different. Therapy was
Yeah,
not
no, that
something.
is,
Therapy was not something that was generally, it was sort of looked down, frowned upon in some instances.
yeah,
And so, with
yeah.
the society we lived in, we turned to the negative coping mechanisms, you know.
Oh, yeah. I think
And
with my condition, like you said, not having the skills, and I think the hardest thing for me in life was growing up, knowing I have this condition, but never meeting anybody with the same one as me. And to relate to anybody, I found it was very difficult. I mean, my condition didn't affect so much my physical aspect for many years, but it affected me mentally. Mentally, it took a toll. And
yeah,
just unfortunately took me to the wrong parts and the wrong people because all I wanted to do was fit in, but I felt, where do I fit in?
yeah. And it's very difficult because on the one hand, you have to hide that you have something. And if someone asks you why you're walking a little bit funny, I always come up with some excuse like, it's,
Well,
I
I
hurt
did
my,
too for a long time.
I hurt myself in the gym, or I did that, or so you can come up with
Yeah,
all sorts of, it's just um, classic denial, denial
yeah,
to totally be living in denial. And yeah, I
yeah,
think every one
big
of
time.
us get to that point where you get to the Rubicon, where I remember when I realized that I can't deny it. I remember exactly where I was. So
Yeah,
I think it's a quite a normal thing back then. I don't hear it a lot from
yeah.
the younger generation now, you know, but yeah, it is a problem. The progression. Do you know anything about further progression? Is it possible that it can progress further? I know that question always, it's like something that we
Yeah.
don't want to hear, but uh, is there anything that you know at this point in time?
Personally, I understand the progression, and they've said, mine will progress, but at a slow rate, and I will say I can live a normal life, in terms of how long I'll live for. But the reality is like I'm still very strong, and my biological mother, she's what 63. She does struggle to walk, but she's still able to do the normal day-to-day things.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope in that I'll be the same. But with everything in life, you never know how it's going to go. I mean, you can be here today and gone tomorrow. So, the condition for me is I'm lucky that I can still do everything on my own, but maybe, it will change later on. But while I'm still okay, I'm going to make the best of it.
Yeah, and that's the right attitude. I mean, those of us, I also, now that I'm in a wheelchair permanently, I also thought back then, that's something I will never be able to cope with. And, you
Mm,
know, and I've got a totally different situation than yours because, you know, I thought back in the day that I would have CMT
yeah,
and I would still be at my age not be in a wheelchair because that's what the doctors basically told me. But
yeah,
but you find ways to cope, and that's what I want to ask you is now that you've got this. you don't hide it, you don't deny it. How do you cope? What do you use to cope with your? Because it's not, even though you're not as far progressed as the rest of the persons with muscular dystrophy, it's still very difficult to live with this kind of disease. I mean, it's
Yes.
I I acknowledge it because I lived it. I remember it.
Yeah.
So how do you
And
cope?
the thing is, coping with it, I do find it hard sometimes because I can call the foundation now and speak to somebody, but I guess I don't know how I do it, but I cope. But then again, I have other ways of coping with it. I have other meetings I attend with support groups and things like that, which help. But there's nobody like me, with my situation. And I just find that, there are a few friends of mine that if I'm having a bad day or my muscles are hurting or I'm irritated that I fell again and get so angry about it, talking to them, speaking out has helped me because I've learned bottling it up and keeping quiet. It doesn't work because you're going to snap.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and there's no
just
need for
finding
that.
the right person to speak about it with.
Yeah. And there's no need for that. I mean, just the mere fact that we are doing this interview or this discussion, having this discussion, just shows how society has changed. Because
Yeah,
it will be on social media. Everyone who takes the time and wants to watch it will watch it and will learn from it as well. But yeah, I think
that's
that's
true.
also something that the WhatsApp groups and meeting new people, even if they are in different provinces or different countries, you
Mhm.
can connect with them and speak with them, and there is a community. That's very important.
Yeah, and also you find that when you meet other people with these conditions, it's like I always say IT, it's a forever thing that changes and you've got to learn and learn to adapt. Technology is changing all the time. But the same with us with these conditions, our conditions progress, and through that progression, we've got to find new ways how to cope or how to deal or find another strategy of getting from point A to point B. And, I find that adapting and meeting new people, they'll give you ideas on how they coped with it. And maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, but at least there's options to hear what might work
Yeah,
other than having no answer or idea at all.
yeah, or waiting for a cure. That's the next question I want to ask
Yeah.
you. I mean, there's no treatment for you at the moment, and you don't take,
Mm.
medicine, and maybe just the odd, as you said, the odd gel for the tough days. But
Yeah.
do you watch do you watch what's going on with research? That's one of the first things that the neurologist told me back in the 90s is keep your eye on the
Yeah.
research. And I've been doing that for 28 years. So
I
uh,
must admit,
what
I
is your
don't,
philosophy
and I
there?
never have.
Yeah, what's your philosophy there? How do you view that?
When I was told there was no cure, at the first glance, I was like, there's no cure. Great. I may as well just die. What life am I going to have? Yeah, I was very negative and despondent about it. And I stopped caring.
Mm.
And then, meeting the right kind of people and that accepted me, it kind of made me feel, okay, I knew I was different, but these people gave me the strength that I was lacking at the time. And they were like, so what, you've got it. It doesn't mean your life's over. Let's use it to your advantage. Help people that struggle or find ways of doing things. And because of that, I stopped looking at the cure because I stopped living. I kept thinking and waiting, I'll just hide away till the cure comes and then I'll join society. It doesn't work like that,
Uh,
unfortunately. And, you know, I just had to continue living because the more I kept waiting for a cure, the more I was getting despondent because nothing happened. Years went by and nothing. And you find that you stop living.
yeah,
And now that I've accepted this, I enjoy life. And, although I do have my struggles, but I can't just sit around and wait.
yeah. I mean, I remember the neurologist that diagnosed me with limb-girdle. I asked him, so what does my life expectancy look like? And he told me, oh, don't worry, you'll live to tell the tale. Yeah. So, so
Yeah.
here I am. I'm almost, I'm going almost going to my 50s, and I've lived to tell the tale. So yeah, I think everyone
Yes,
watching this must just know that while you are not wanting to do things and trying to shy away, which I did for periods of time, and I guess which is normal sometimes,
yeah,
life is going past you. You know, you are not experienced. You
that's the thing.
go
Yeah.
and do stuff. You don't have to go and do stuff as often as other people do, but still go and do
Yes,
stuff so you can talk about it. So
yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I myself am, how can I say, I'm a recovering addict. I suffer from depression, bipolar, all these things. And there's only a certain amount of things doctors and pills and medications can do. Your mental capacity of what you believe outweighs that negativity. You just got to try find that little light in that dark tunnel when things get bad, and that makes a world of a difference. But it is hard sometimes when your body doesn't want to work with you, and it is difficult, but it's not worth giving up. There's always something that can change it.
yeah, I was going to ask you what advice you have for other persons, but I think you've just summarized it quite well. Um,
Yeah.
but is there a life philosophy that stands out for you that sort of people can look up to and say, yeah, wow, come and look at Megan. She's been through all of this stuff. Not only living with CMT, but all the other things you just mentioned, and she still
Yeah.
has the positivity to 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 get ahead and to go onto Zoom and do an interview and tell people about it.
My philosophy is that it came up many years ago, and I literally tattooed it on me to remind me. And the statement goes, pain is temporary, but quitting is forever. And that got me through some really hard times with my muscular dystrophy. When my legs were hurting, they were cramping, they were paining. And I pushed through that pain and horrible. And now, like, I'm okay. I feel good. And that's the reality for me. If I let the pain and the depression consume me, then what do I have? A fight, you're gonna fight to get to the top of the mountain, but once you get there, how you feel in that moment of making it, it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's not the
So
goal
yeah,
that's
that's the thing
important.
that's
It's the journey
yeah,
that while you're thinking you're going to be happy when a goal comes around, it's actually the most important part is the journey of getting there and different
yeah,
goals every day, just keeping at it and keeping positive and working on it. That's what I found.
yeah.
You're not going to be happy all the time, but
No,
if you're going to be miserable all of the time, then why are you here? I think I agree with you.
exactly. And what I also agree with, the way I see it sometimes is that when you're depressed, you know what? Okay, feel those emotions, go through that depressive state, don't ignore it, but also get yourself out of it. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be like that. The only way you can change it is by your own mindset. It's okay to be depressed, it's okay to be angry, and go through the motion, but get up again. You
correct. And
know.
the thing is, if you use maybe alcohol or whatever
Mm.
substance, it gets more difficult to get out of those.
It
The
does.
oh, I found that because I'm completely sober. I'm a teetotaler at the moment. I found that it was much more. I thought I was going to be depressed if I stopped drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, but quite the opposite. It was easier for me to get out of those downward spirals, whatever you call them.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. I mean, I started this heavy drinking and using substances um because I was depressed, or I wanted to fit in, I wanted to be something other than what I am. And what goes up must come down.
yeah,
And I was actually more lonely doing those things than I was when I stopped doing them. I only started living once I got clean.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was it was a hard thing because I thought if I don't drink, if I don't, do these things, then I'm boring. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine having fun or enjoying life without them.
Well, that's what society tells us. I mean, if you go into social media, I was watching a video from John Mayer the other day where he was talking about him getting sober. And what he was saying is that every weekend there's a lot of enabling going on social media. You know,
Mm,
all these memes of, if I die, I die, or they'll show pictures of someone being totally sober, and then just after like 2 hours later, you're very drunk people. And so there's a lot of enabling
yeah.
going on. And what he was saying is, imagine if he does it now that he's sober, then everyone's going to criticize you and saying, "Oh, but you're judgmental." You know,
Yeah.
so so it's a very personal thing. I found I kind of shy away from it from persons who don't want to talk about it. So I am very glad that you decided to share that with us today, because it's something I would never have asked pinpoint, because it's so personal. It's almost like
Yes.
religion and sport and politics. It's a very personal thing.
Very much. And I think, the reason I speak about these things so openly is because, like, I used to hide it and pretend nothing's wrong. And I know that I'm not the only one that does that and hides away. And I feel like if I share these things and let other people know, hey, she's spoken about it, she's doing this, why don't I try and see if it works?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I wish I had. I wish there was something like Zoom back in the day, because if I saw this, if the 21-year-old me saw this, I think my
Yeah,
life would have been much easier for many years.
definitely. And I agree with you. If I had just met other people when I was younger and I think I might have chosen differently my path in life. But I don't regret anything now. Everything
Yeah,
I've went through has made me who I am. So
yeah,
there's that too.
yeah. No, I agree with you as well. I don't have any regrets. It builds you, and it creates who you are today, and
Yeah,
that is what matters. So, but thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate you taking the time.
no problem.
Um, and yeah, you continue doing your good work with the MDFSA and taking part as a member. I do think we need to build on what the MDFSA has become. I definitely think we do.
Yes, I think there's always room for growth.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Megan.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm happy that I could share and hopefully it helps some other people struggling.
Thank you so much.